A humanoid robot that can actually do useful work. A lot of people would say that there is no way Tesla can do this. But actually, when you break it down and you look at what they are already achieving with FSD, and you start to understand that they literally have robots on wheels, and it's just about transferring that to having a robot on legs, you start to understand that this is actually possible. Sure, it will be more advanced than just having a vehicle that can move, but it's definitely doable in my opinion. And then once you believe it's possible, you can start plugging in figures and doing some sort of napkin maths. You can start trying to work out what this could mean in terms of added value to Tesla as a company, the effect it might have on market cap, what it might do to Tesla's top line and bottom line. And when you start looking at the numbers that this could generate, the numbers honestly get very mad very quickly. And then you start thinking, surely not. This has never happened before. Something this crazy has never happened, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen. And this is where you start to see those absolutely crazy numbers come into play. Those $22,000 per share sort of figures, where you're thinking there is no way that a company can reach that sort of level. And of course, you're not actually going to see Tesla stock show as $22,000 or whatever it may be on your screen, because it will undergo lots and lots of stock splits. But these numbers start to become actually feasible when you look at what the humanoid robot could do, and then you add that on to FSD. You add it onto their energy business. You add it onto their EV sales, which in the future will actually be a very, very small part of what Tesla does as an overall company. You look at, Dojo, all of these elements of Tesla, it does start to get quite wild. And then you start to realize that Tesla in a decade to come could be extremely valuable. But obviously, this relies on you actually thinking and believing that these possible catalysts that could happen will happen. That's a judgment that you need to make for yourself. And then you need to say, okay, well, what if the bot doesn't happen, but this, and this does? Where does that put me? What if FSD doesn't happen? I strongly believe it will, but what if it doesn't? And what if the bot also fails through? And then I have just the energy sector, the EV sales, whatever else. Does that still make this a really highly, a stock that I'm really highly convicted in? That's a decision that you need to make. So the first thing to say here really is that for a long, long time, these bots just felt and seemed like a long way off sci-fi, if you will. But now that we've seen how good Tesla is progressing with their full self-driving, they are moving towards autonomous vehicles very well, very quickly. That's when there has been a flip in my mind to say that actually these humanoid robots could be happening a lot sooner than what I originally estimated. And now I'm starting to understand that it's very, very feasible that this actually happens. Whereas before it seemed more like a pipe dream, very, very exciting if it does happen. It could do this, but whatever. We'll be waiting decades and decades and decades. I may not even see it in my lifetime sort of idea. But now that they've managed to display, version 12 FSD, and it's really good, and it just shows how quickly they're moving with that, I don't see how this wouldn't happen. As long as they still obviously have the drive to make this happen, and they absolutely do. And the reason that I'm making this comparison is because right now, Tesla vehicles are literally robots on wheels. They will be utilizing the same neural networks and the same AI systems. And the learnings that the FSD software has can be transferred into the bot. Now, like I said, it's going to be a little bit harder. You don't literally need a bot to be able to drive around. So it's not as straightforward as perhaps FSD is going to be. Straightforward. So obviously a lot to it. You will need a bot to be able to do different activities that, FSD doesn't need to do. But the point is that they've done a lot of the groundwork already. And they are already solving the limiting factor of not having enough compute power. That for a long time has been the true bottleneck in solving FSD. And if they hadn't done that, then, training the bots is also going to be really, really time consuming and really difficult. But now they've sort of solved that by having their own supercomputer dojo, and by having 10,000 NVIDIA H100 chips, which are a lot better than the previous version that they had. This stuff is going to get better exponentially. And they are obviously getting experience in dealing with and curating vast volumes of data. So they can apply this experience to the next project of the bots. So then we need to start thinking about, okay, well, Tesla are trying to create a bot, but they've also got all of this other stuff going on. So won't it just be easier for another company that can 100% focus on the bots just to do this? Is there going to be a lot of competition here? And actually, a lot of companies already have and have been for a long time creating these humanoid type robotics. But there is a real difference between the way that Tesla are doing it and the way that other companies are doing it. And Tesla does have a really strong advantage here. So let me just explain that quickly. Now, I am not saying that Tesla will be the only company to do this. The same with autonomous driving. But the edge that Tesla have here is that they have been and they are really, really focused from day one of getting these bots up and going at doing this at scale. So creating a humanoid robot, creating a robot that can do useful work is one thing, but it is a completely different ballgame to be able to manufacture and produce these at mass, at scale. And there has been other companies that have managed to produce a few, however many robots, but they have not yet been able to do it at scale. And one perhaps not so glamorous thing that Tesla does really, really well, one of their real advantages, is how good they are at manufacturing. They are extremely innovative. We know this. And they are extremely good at getting their manufacturing processes as effective and as efficient as they possibly can be. They are great at making things easier, quicker, and more profitable. And when you are a company trying to mass produce a product, this is absolutely key. And another great thing here is that Tesla already have their first customer lined up. Tesla will be the first customer of Tesla bots. Now, obviously, if you've got another company that is producing a humanoid robot, they may take a few themselves to test them, to maybe do a few useful tasks, but actually they're not going to be ordering thousands upon thousands of their own bots because they wouldn't have a use for them. Whereas Tesla is obviously literally manufacturing vehicles every single day at scale. They could put a lot of their own bots at work straight away. So I imagine they will literally be using a fleet of their own bots to work in their own factories. And these bots will probably be doing quite useful, but very boring, very repetitive, perhaps slightly unsafe work. So even if Tesla doesn't actually sell or loan, which we'll get onto in a minute, these bots to other customers for many, many years, they will still take a lot of them themselves. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, great. They take them themselves. They're not really going to make any money because they're their own customer. Actually, no. Because what they will be able to do is they will be able to replace manual labor. They will be able to replace operators on the floor. This means that they won't have to pay them operators, and a bot is going to be way more efficient anyway. So this will actually save them money, and then their margins will go up. So it becomes very valuable for them very quickly. So what I'm basically saying is, even if Tesla doesn't have any customers for a good few years, or they don't decide to actually put these out to other customers for quite a while, Tesla as a business will highly benefit from this. And of course, if Tesla as a business are highly benefiting from it in terms of money saving or more efficient or whatever it may be, Tesla investors will be benefiting from this as well. And as with anything, the bots will follow an S-curve. At first, there will be very few of them, and they probably won't be doing really useful stuff. They'll be doing basic things like moving around objects and stuff like that. But as they get better and they get more useful and they learn more skills, they will become more useful for more people. And this is the point where they start getting more demand. They get more widely adopted and the scalability starts shooting right up. And this is that point of the S-curve where you see the exponential growth. And eventually you'll hit some level of maturation. But when you think about how useful the bot is going to be and how many people will actually want one eventually, the maturation point is going to be very, very far off in the future. Because the market for these is somewhat infinite. Or at least it feels like it could be infinite. Now, originally, I thought that Tesla would basically start making bots for themselves, use them in their own factories. Then I thought that they would quickly move on to, selling them to other factories for factory work only, and then eventually other businesses, and then eventually they would start putting them in the homes. But the way that I'm thinking about this nowadays is slightly different, given that I've done a little bit more research. If they openly sell them to anyone that is willing to pay however much they're going to be, then that basically means that anyone can own one and anyone can put it to work as they want to. And this is quite dangerous, given that Elon Musk and Tesla as a business, they have quite a strong purpose and a reason for doing what they do. I don't think that they're really going to want people to utilize the humanoid robot Optimus however they wish. It wouldn't really align with their values. So I still do believe that Tesla will be their own first mass customer of these bots. And I think that at the point that the bots get really, good enough to basically do very skilled, very useful work. So at the point where they are able to do the same work that you would pay a worker to do, they will start mass producing. And at that point, I think that they will actually start loaning and leasing the bots out to other companies that want one. So instead of selling them and just selling them and that be it, the other company now owns them, do what you want with your product, you've purchased it. Instead of doing that, maybe they will actually go down the route of loaning the bot out, because that way they ultimately still have the final say and the control. They still own it. So at any time they want to, have it back, they want to stop the customer, the end user doing what they are doing with it, they can. That has a level of control, and that stops other companies basically being able to do things with the bot that perhaps Tesla wouldn't actually want to be done with the bot. Revenue wise, of course, this would be great for Tesla. If they are able to get a monthly sum of money come in ongoing to loan these bots out to other companies, that is an ongoing high margin revenue. But Elon did say that eventually these bots will be sold for less than $20,000 each. So that suggests more of a one cost model. So maybe he's thinking really long term about this, and potentially in the future there could be a mix of the two different revenue models. Who really knows? We've got no final details on this at all yet. And once these bots are able to do useful work, they are able to actually do work that you would pay someone to do, the potential's pretty crazy. Because when you think about it, apart from when the bot is actually charging or needing maintenance, they can pretty much work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But of course they will need time for charging and maintenance. So probably they're going to be working on average about 20 hours in a given day, let's say. What they won't need to do is take annual paid time off. They are not going to need to take a trip to Italy to enjoy the sun with their family. And I doubt they would also have a sick day really, and you're definitely not going to have to contribute to their pension. So suddenly a business with bots is getting a lot more done, and it becomes a cheaper operation for the owner of that business. So even if you could rent a bot from Tesla for, let's say, $3,000 per month, which is actually, I think, quite high. Maybe, I'm not really sure. I think that Elon Musk and the Tesla team will want to make these as cheap as possible, as soon as they start scaling, so that you get the demand. But let's just say $3,000 per month. And it could work for about 20 hours each day, maybe potentially even more, but let's just be conservative here and say 20 hours a day. That means that on average, the bot would be working 560 hours each month. And what does a human do? Probably about 160 hours, and all of them hours won't actually be fully productive, fully utilized work. And this assumes that they also don't have any paid time off or sick days. So you can quickly see how much more a bot could actually get done. And we're only at this point talking about that very, the very labor intensive type of work. We're not talking about accountants or doctors. We are purely talking about operating machines, maybe moving cargo, working on ships, things like that. Depending on the state that you live in or even the country you live in, the minimum wage that I found on Google right now is about $7.25 an hour, whereas the bot would work out at about $5 an hour. So straight away you can see the cost savings here. Of course you would need to pay maintenance and charging fees, but even when you're thinking about a human, you are not just paying as an employer, as a business owner. You're not just paying that minimum wage and that's it. Because as a business owner, you will also need to pay for any sick time off that they have if they're entitled to that, paid leave maybe, insurance for the employee, you may have to contribute to their pension, and there may actually be tax that you have to pay towards the government. And I don't think that this tax is just going to stop when a bot comes along and replaces that worker. There will be a tax on the bot of some sort. It won't just be wiped out, because then the government aren't getting their money from the employer either. But I just don't know how that will work yet. So per year, it could cost a business about $36,000 for a bot. And that is excluding maintenance and charging. Now, of course, these figures are not accurate by any means. This is me plugging in numbers to try and just get an idea of the potential of this. I invite you to leave your own thoughts and your own models in the comments below. But this would give someone about 20 hours worth of work per day for 7 days a week for pretty much the entire year, maybe excluding 5 days just in case your bot needs any maintenance. So that is like 7,200 hours of work per year. So you start to see how valuable even owning one bot could be for a business. Perhaps right now a business pays 10 employees. By just having one bot that could essentially work so many more hours for a much cheaper rate, they could remove a couple of them employees straight away. That is a real cost and time saving for that business. But of course, the majority of jobs in the US and in Europe and pretty much the entire world, excluding maybe a few areas, will be paying more than the minimum wage. And it's when the bot is going to have the abilities to do the more skilled work than just moving boxes that it gets really exciting. What happens when the bot is able to do the work that you would normally pay an employee $30 an hour, $40 an hour, $50 an hour? And maybe Tesla could start putting their prices up as the bot gets smarter. And I mentioned this idea in the last video, but you can also have like an app store whereby you basically sell the bot or you lease the bot out for a standard fee. And then if people want the bot to be able to do certain skills like garden or, you know, certain skills within a business, you add on a price to actually obtain that skill. That is a model, a revenue model that could become very lucrative. The reason that investors get so pumped about the potential of the bot is because of the potential of how many can be sold. There could be one bot per person on average. That means that there could be 8 million bots. Or you could have 2 per person. 16 million bots. Even if you take the 1 per person on average, that's 8 billion. If you do 8 billion times whatever these are sold for, whatever the take home for Tesla is after manufacturing and whatever else, 8 billion multiplied by any number is a very large number. And then you start looking at the possibility of having 2 per person, or you start thinking about how many a business could actually order. And essentially the market for this is absolutely crazy because it's unlimited labor. That's mad. And then when you start to add on the possibility of having these in homes, then it gets even more mental, because not only are these able to disrupt the labor industry, which is massive, and you start thinking that, you know, they could do manual labor on ships out in the sea, they could do it on building sites, construction sites, simply moving stuff around in factories. They could be working in restaurants, and then they could be in homes, and maybe everyone would want one in their home if they could afford it, just to be doing like laundry, washing dishes, all the stuff that you don't want to do, gardening, whatever it may be. There could literally be a whole business created of bots that just go out and cut the grass. The governments could employ them to cut the grass in the public areas. You start to see the potential for this. Then you start to understand how this could be bigger than autonomous driving, how it could be much bigger than the shift to electric vehicles. It could quite literally change everything. And the demand for these globally could easily be over 10 billion. So then it comes down to whether Tesla are going to be able to mass produce these at scale, because it's that is going to set Tesla apart from any other competitor. And they have got a good track record of this. They've been able to scale up the production of their vehicles like nobody else in the business. And the bot actually should be less complicated. There are less moving parts. It's much smaller than a vehicle. So actually, and they've got, you know, the foundations in place for mass production. It should actually, theoretically, be a lot cheaper to manufacture at scale and a lot quicker and a lot easier. Also, interestingly, in terms of manufacturing, they could actually have the bots building the bots, which is kind of weird to think about. And whenever I think about how they could have bots building bots, all I can imagine is they make one bot, and then that one bot makes another bot, and then you have 2 bots. And then those 2 bots now make another 2 bots, and then there's 4 bots. 4 bots make 4 bots, and it just keeps proliferating like that, and it's kind of scary to think about how big the bot fleet could actually get and how quickly that could happen. I actually watched a movie on Netflix last night called Tim, and it really creeped me out. Probably not good timing to watch that and then film this video. But if there's any company that is going to do this, I'm just glad it's Tesla. Tesla could make a lot of money here, and saying a lot of money is a real understatement. If the bot is easier to manufacture than the vehicles, and it's cheaper to manufacture, and the market potential, the total addressable market, the TAM, is literally infinite, and the margins are higher than we've probably ever seen a product before, the amount of money is just mind-blowing. So we know that manufacturing a bot will be cheaper than manufacturing a vehicle. And right now, on average, it costs Tesla about $36,000 to manufacture a vehicle. Obviously, that depends on which model. But if you then start subtracting the labor cost, because it will be quicker and easier, and you may be able to get bots to actually do it in the future, and you take into account that there will be less parts in a bot than there is in a vehicle, and also they are going to be manufacturing these with scalability in mind from the off, and they will be able to utilize some of their existing factories and their lines that they've set up, and also they can utilize existing hardware and software that they already have. You start to see that this is going to be a much cheaper operation. So I think easily it will be half the price of a vehicle. I'm thinking more about a quarter of the price to manufacture a bot compared to a vehicle. So this means that there will basically be an extremely high profit margin on each bot. I think the most common price that I've heard people say as to how much it will cost to make a bot for Tesla is anywhere between $9,000 and $16,000. So if Tesla get one day to be making them for about $10,000 each, but they charge $3,000 per month to actually lease it out to another company. And that is obviously ongoing for the lifetime of the bot. I'm not really sure what the lifespan of a bot would actually be, but even so, Tesla would have made their money back within a few months. So Optimus is obviously meant to be a general purpose bot. It is not meant to only be made to move boxes or to work in factories. In the future, it should be able to pretty much do anything that you need it to do. But when it comes to the timeline of this, it's really hard to know. Of course, it will be faster now than what we previously expected, given that they've managed to actually solve the limiting factor and they've got all of the understandings and the foundations in place from FSD to apply to the bot. So that's going to make it a lot quicker, but obviously there may be regulations, there may be some manufacturing line issues, I don't know. We don't really know how long it's going to take. And also Tesla have had a bit of an issue with getting the actuators. They found it a lot harder to get them from third parties to be a good enough standard. So they've actually gone in-house and designed these themselves now. That's probably going to be a good thing for them to actually do in the future anyway, to actually do them in-house. It takes the pressure off them relying on anybody else. So once Tesla can actually mass produce these bots straight off the line and they're all identical to each other, they can start actually training the fleet of bots. So I don't think that it will be more than a couple of years that Tesla get to a point where they have a lot of these bots doing useful work in their own factories. But then when it comes to other companies actually leasing these bots to do work for them from Tesla, I think that's more like 4 to 5 years out. And then when we start to think about these bots being in the home, I'm not anticipating that's going to happen in the next 5 years. Maybe more like 7 years and onwards from that point. But like we said, no one really knows when this is going to happen. I'm excited to see more about where they are with the bots at the next AI Investor Day. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions about the bots or you want to add any information in that I may have missed out, please leave it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon.